I just was making sure it wasn't, so if it goes with a change order for something that we did, then that's different than material costs.
This is the water softening project that says $93,000, is that the thing?
Right. And it's, I think the actual change order is right in here. Sorry. Here it is. So it's to replace ventilation fans, exterior welded flanges, and asphalt.
Okay, I wanted to, when I read that on the requisition sheet, what I was wanting to know is if we're seeing increase in costs as a result of material cost increases, those sorts of things. But if this is a change order, it doesn't say change order on there, it says something else.
Well, one thing
It says increase, it just indicates as an increase.
Right.
if it need be, and Chris Rouse will be in here later on, we could ask him that specific question relative.
No, that, you've answered my question, I just, because
Yeah,
it
it
was such a
wasn't-
large
it
number, I
wasn't,
was,
right.
so, and it just said increase, it didn't say that it was a change order, so
Right.
now that I
And
see this
if
thing
you would
split
like
up.
me to be more clear on the requisition list, because a lot of times those requisitions coincide with actual contracts and agreements that you have in your consent agenda.
Yeah, and that's what that was what I was basing my assumption on, but because it just said increase.
Right.
I wanted, and it was such a large number, that I wanted to make sure it was something that wasn't outside, that the contractor hasn't come back and said, look, we're experiencing this record increase in materials or labor or whatever, and that we're starting to experience that in
I
existing
think because
contracts.
they're under contract, I don't think they can do that.
Well, there's probably a provision around there for something,
I
so.
don't think the prosecutor's office lets us sign
Oh,
those.
okay, good.
Because they just kicked one back that were a bid pending now that it had some sort of comment about that, and
Uh-huh.
they kicked it back and they said no.
Okay, well, this is helpful, thank you. So I don't have a problem with any of those on there.
And yes? Okay, that's yes for me too. Okay, is there anything else?
No, sir.
All right, so our first item is with the Little Miami Watershed.
We have
Do we have
a distinguished guest, Mrs. Taft. Well, tell the governor I said hello back. It's nice to see you.
Are you on the first agenda item too? Yes. Okay.
Co-presenting, but Chris is doing most of the work.
All right.
Can I use this? Just the computer?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, excuse me, thank you for letting us come and speak with you. We are part of the Little Miami Watershed Network, which is a local volunteer organization that was put together by Mrs. Taft and another gentleman, local gentleman, for the protection of the Little Miami River. If you're not familiar with the river, let me see, there we go. If you're not familiar at all with the Little Miami, it runs 115 miles starting in Springfield, going right through Warren County, all the way down to Cincinnati. And it is one of our very first, it is the first state and national scenic river in the state of Ohio. So it's a pristine and protected river. Our organization is a project organization. We are project orientated. And what we do is things like river cleanups, education along the river, plantings and tributary cleanups, those kinds of things. In 2021, that's a little bit about our organization. In 2021, we took on a larger project, a project that we felt needed accomplished. And it came about because we were getting the question of, what's the river worth? And I'm sure you folks get that question periodically about things. And to us, the river is worth a lot. We spend a lot of time on it, we recreate on it, and it's precious to us. But that question why wasn't about what it meant to us. It was about what's the dollar value of having a river in your community. It was a question that we never even thought about and weren't sure how to answer. So we worked with Ohio State University, Professor Brent Songen, and Professor Songen has done a number of economic surveys, recreation surveys across the state of Ohio. He put together a 7-month-long survey for the top 43 miles of the river. We did not do all 115 miles. We only did the northern section. And I've been asked the question, why did you only do that much? Well, if you've ever done a survey, you got to keep it controlled and got to keep it small and manageable. Plus, we wanted to do our community. We're from the northern part of the river, so we wanted the answer for the northern part of the river. Part of that 43 miles runs right through Warren County. Our survey started in Springfield and ended at Mathers Mills, just south of Borgonia. So we did part of Warren County. The survey was done all by volunteers, which if you're familiar with if you've ever done a survey, you know that's astonishing all into itself. Volunteers typically don't commit to a 7-month-long project, let alone a survey, because most people don't like doing surveys. We distributed 100,000 surveys, and miraculously, we got a 17% return rate, which is really high for a survey. Why we wanted to talk to you is because we wanted to share the information specifically about your community to you. You have the whole survey information. You have a 1-page sort of synopsis in front of you, but we want to give you just the Warren County information. The Recreational Impact Survey was done on 45 sites, as I said, from Springfield down to Mathers Mills. We found that there were 836,000 trips made to the river in a 1-year time period in those 45 sites. Just in Warren County, there were 96,195 trips to 9 sites, and that's the only the northern part of the river that runs through your community. That's almost 1 million trips.
How do you define a trip?
A trip is anybody that came to visit the river. If they came to hike, walk, bike, canoe, kayak, anything that was a visit to that particular site.
How would you be able to get that information?
It was all done through the survey. How many times do you visit the river? How often do you go? How many people do you come with? That was all part of the survey, and it was all calculated.
So you just took a statistical analysis and
Correct.
worked it into how many out of the population
Yep.
you got and how many respondents you
Correct.
You
Correct.
took that over the whole population.
Over the whole population, correct. So, your sites included everything in the north, from Bowman Park, as I say, all the way down to Mathers Mills. Bike path sites, community park sites, ODNR recreation sites. We did both sites that were right against the river and sites that were a little off the river, but folks could access the river from those sites. And why did we do that? Because people do that. They'll park, they'll hike to the river, they'll park, they'll go and play baseball with their kids, and then take their kids for a hike. So we used a number of different sites to gather all this data. We found that folks were using the sites most often in May and June, and that didn't surprise us. The weather had broken, it had gotten nice, the kids had just gotten out of school, so this is the typical time, right before summer vacation, right before thinking about going back to school. The Corwin Bike Path parking lot, which is there by the Red Barn Lumberyard, is the highest number of folks using the bike path in the river of all 45 sites. Hugely popular.
Yes, I'm well aware of that as somebody who parks there or drives there to bike.
That was one of my sites,
Yeah.
and it was not unusual for me to have 90-plus cars there.
Yeah, we would, it's we have to time it just right for our bike.
Yeah,
ride.
yeah, or there's no space left.
Yeah.
Yeah. The total recreation impact, the value determined by the number of visits and the number of folks using the site, was $14.9 million for that 43 miles of river. It was a combination of both tangible and intangible dollar amount. So tangible being things like buying gasoline, buying canoes, buying kayaks. But there is a magical computer now that can figure out when you say, I love recreation, I love to recreate, the river's important to me, they can take that and figure that into a dollar value now. So the amount that is a consumer surplus dollar value is $14.9 million. So what does that mean for Warren County? $1,176,830 per year. So the river's bringing in a whole lot of folks and a whole lot of money into your community. And as I say, we only did a portion of the river within Warren County. We didn't survey the other end of the river that runs through Warren County. Across the 43 miles, the river generates $336,500 per mile per year. So if you take that 14.9 and divide it by 43, it works out to be $346,500. So if you figure each mile within Warren County is worth that amount, it's an awful lot of money. So why is it important? Well, we can now answer the question, what's the river worth? But we can also answer why it's important to protect it, why it's important to have an organization like ourselves that, does things like cleanups. But the comprehensive study helps us to convince you folks that when you're making decisions about the river, about the buffer zones, about what's planted, about what's done along the river, you understand the dollar value of that scenic river. And now more than ever, we've got to protect it. There's so much pressure on the river itself that setting aside riparian zones, doing special plantings, thinking about what you're planting, natives rather than non-natives, are all important. And we thank you for letting us come and give you that information.
Yeah, so is there something you think we should be doing that we're not doing right now?
I've never really looked into what you are and aren't doing specifically. So no, I'm not going to point to any one item. We just want to provide you with information to think about.
But the more you can allow the river to use its natural floodplains, not encroach on them, the more you can give nice wide setbacks of planting material to the river, into the streams that flow into the river. The cleaner it's going to be, the better it's going to flow, the less destruction of the riverbank that's going to have. Because right now, with all the rain that we get at certain times, the rain bombs as they're called, and all the outlets from industrial and residential areas cause the river to flash flood. And when it does that, it eats away at the bank and causes erosion. It causes trees to fall. It causes all sorts of havoc. And the more erosion that gets into the water, the more it covers up the rocky bottom. And after a while, excuse me, it'll get so bad that the smallmouth bass, which is one of the big advantages of our river, will no longer like to live here and will move other places. The mussel, who is the natural water purifier, will all die out. And we have surveys that show that it is now getting in more and more in trouble. All those kind of things that you all can work to protect through your zoning and planning regulations.
And I think that we've had some issues with the kind of silt guards and things like that when they're doing construction, new construction in neighborhoods. that's specifically to prevent this runoff into the rivers and stuff, and into the Little Miami River. And I know that, I think we've had projects where we've had to look at that mussel issue too, where we couldn't go in and do certain things in the river to disrupt the mussel population. So I know that comes up every once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's all those things that add up that really make a difference into the quality of the river. And if the quality of the river goes down, then all of your taxes and other assets that it supports and increases, all that value goes down too.
Okay,
Well,
thank
yeah, thank you, ladies, number one, for doing this work, and it's so impressive when people are passionate about a particular subject that isn't forefront all the time, and then all of a sudden, wait, that's actually really important. We are involved with the river a lot, actually, that it's the only asset that goes through our county that's federally protected. It is a federally protected scenic river. So the things that we do or don't do, the federal government is involved with. And sometimes as simple as a bridge or changing a bridge. It's like, wait a second, we can't touch the Little Miami River. So we know that it's incredibly important. It's a great asset, number one. And number two, we have tried to the best of our ability to protect it. When we built a new water treatment facility, we went above and beyond what Ohio EPA's guidelines were to put in extra protective layers to do this, because I know the discharge, or we know that the discharge goes into the Little Miami. So we are very cognizant of what we do, and we've been very intentional about trying to make that the best output as possible. And then, as Commissioner Grossman said, we have done that in a lot of our zoning over time, and we understand. We've gone back and forth with farmers sometimes about fertilizer and the runoffs that go into it. So all of those things do come before us from time to time, and so we are big fans of the river. We appreciate what you're doing, but yeah, we know it's an asset, and we want it to get better, not worse on our watch.
Thank you very much. That's why we hope that you will use these numbers to reinforce it to people who don't appreciate it as much as you do, that they need to appreciate it. And thank you again for making sure your wastewater treatment plant is up to snuff and above snuff, because in the fall of the year and the winter of the year, about 70 to 80% of the water in the Little Miami River is the effluent from wastewater treatment plants.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Didn't know
There are
that.
about 11 to 13 wastewater treatment plants along the river, and because the aquifer is so low, most of the water in the river is from wastewater treatment plants. So
Wow.
we really appreciate that.
That's a stunning figure.
That's amazing. Well, thank you. And your husband once told me what his toughest job ever was. Do you know what that was?
County Commissioner.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
My
I
heart
tended
goes out
to
you.
disagree with him, but yeah, he said it was for him, it was.
My heart goes out to you.
Well, how are you all doing? How's your husband and you all?
We're
Everything's
doing just fine. We love living in Greene County. One of the reasons I'm so passionate about the Little Miami River is because we live right on the river, and I could see the trash floating down the river when we moved in, and I'm thinking, this has got to change. And of course, the more you pick out the things that you can see, the more you learn about the things you can't see. And that's what we're really concerned about, is making sure that the quality of the river is good, both visibly and invisibly. So we appreciate your help.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Way to corral 700 volunteers. That's a task.
She directed them all, too. Herding cats, I'm sure you've all done.
Sure. Okay, we now have a public hearing, and we are beyond the time for that, so I assume we can start it. For consideration of issuance of hospital facilities revenue bonds by Allen County for bond Secures Mercy Health, Inc. And is there any representative here today on that?
Thank you so much for your time. My name is Melissa Santiago, and I'm here with Dinsmore and Scholl, who's serving as bond counsel on this transaction. This public hearing is being held in connection with the possible issuance by the County of Allen, Ohio, of its hospital facilities revenue bonds in a principal amount not to exceed $300 million. The proceeds of the bonds will be loaned to Bon Secours Mercy Health for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, and equipping hospital facilities and reimbursing and refinancing previous expenditures of that type. Though Allen County is the issuer of the bonds, we're seeking approval from your county due to its participation in a public hospital agencies agreement, which basically allows proceeds of revenue bonds issued by any one of the members to be spent within the jurisdictions of all of the members. So due to the fact that there are a few projects that will be financed from the proceeds of the bonds in your county, we're seeking approval from you all today. And with that in mind, please note that these bonds are backed solely by the revenues of Bon Secours Mercy Health. No taxpayer dollars will be pledged or used to pay back the bonds. The bonds do not constitute debt or general obligations of the county and do not in any way affect the ability of the county to issue bonds for its own purposes. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to address them, but thank you so much for your time.
Okay, any questions? Is there anything that we should be asking about?
No, this is not a matter of first impression. We've done this before.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so,
Do we have a
The
resolution?
Yeah.
but before that, is there any, obviously, there's nobody else to speak to it, I guess. All right, go
I have
ahead.
a resolution authorizing the County of Warren, Ohio to approve the issuance of hospital facilities revenue bonds of the County of Allen, Ohio, and authorizing other documents in connection with the issuance of such bonds.
Okay, before we do anything else, do we need to close the public hearing, Bruce?
Yes.
All right, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
And yes?
Yes, and now we have to consider that resolution, is that right? Okay, is there any discussion of that?
So moved.
And yes?
Okay, can you call the roll on that?
Mr. Grossman?
Yes?
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, you want to call Neil Tunison and see if he can get over here?
Yeah, actually, I talked to him earlier. I can go out and check and, or maybe Candace maybe can check and see if he might be out in the lobby there.
Might want to talk to Chris Brosh too, who knows?
I just texted him.
Okay.
What's Neil on the agenda for?
For the hearing from last week.
Okay, I can speak to that. He probably won't come after I talked to him yesterday. He and I spoke yesterday relating to the authority which he had cited in the resolution for conducting or asking you to renew the fee in 5 townships for the stormwater fee. No increase, staying the same. I told you last week you needed to have 2 public hearings because the statute for the rules and regulations require 2 public hearings. Now there he comes. Anyway, I talked with Neil yesterday relating to the fact that there's nothing in our stormwater regulations per se relating to the fee, and the statute he cites does not require a public hearing. As odd as that may be, that the General Assembly promulgated a law that allows the legislative body to impose a fee on taxpayers without a public hearing, that's what the statute says, or doesn't say. It doesn't require a public hearing to impose this fee, so we don't need to have a public hearing. It wasn't advertised as a public hearing. It was just on as a work session item, so you may go ahead and approve that resolution.
So we didn't need a public hearing last week either?
You did not have a public hearing
Okay.
last week. You had a work session.
Oh, I see, all
I
right,
thought it was advertised as a public hearing, but it wasn't. It was
Okay.
advertised as a work session.
okay.
So we just need to approve then the same fee that it's always been. They're not asking for a fee increase. It's just a continuation of current practice.
You can approve that resolution if you so desire without doing anything else.
Okay, do we have a resolution?
I have a resolution to create rates and charges for the County Stormwater Management District 1 in accordance with Section 6117 of the High Revised Code.
So moved.
And yes?
Okay, yes. All right, Anil, I guess, do you want to say anything else about this?
How about that?
Okay.
Well,
Fair.
well, Bruce and I are gonna be talking about this, for the future. So, what we don't address in our, stormwater regs is a fee. All 61-1702E states that we can set, a fee for activities, to pay for activities related to meeting the MPDES National Pollution Discharge Elimination System Phase 2 program, which is what our MS4 program that we have does, that Ohio EPA requires us to do, and it's in accordance with that particular section of law. But it doesn't say that you have to have a hearing, but maybe we need to address our fee in our stormwater regs. And if we do, then we need to have a hearing. So we're going to be discussing that.
I'm afraid Otis Rudd would turn over in his grave. You might remember the time the commissioners imposed an additional $5 fee for the auto tags, and it was advertised, and who would have thought anybody from Warren County would show up to oppose a $5 increase, but yet Otis Rudd did.
He did, that's right. That was during my time.
Yeah,
I remember.
Dave would remember.
He brought a group too.
Yeah, he went goo-goo over that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'll touch right at it.
This is on a different matter, but I put together a little handout. It was actually for Steve Shabbat. I talked to him last week. But this is a list of projects that we federally funded transportation projects that we have going on in Warren County for the next few years. And I just thought you might like to
Great.
see that. I didn't bring one here for you, Bruce.
I'm not for
Here, I'll let you.
Goodness, thank you.
I'll let you. Oh, sorry.
Man, our TID has really grown, hasn't it?
It sure has.
I remember sitting on the TID years ago was I a House appointment? I might
Yep.
have even been when I was in
You
the
were.
House, not in the Senate,
Right,
and it was a little itty bitty.
yeah. Just thought I'd let you see it. If you have any questions, you
that's-
can let me know, but we're, I've shown projects that we've got funded through the County Engineers Association. They have a bridge fund, local bridge replacement fund. So I've shown that, and then the latest transportation bill, the the bipartisan infrastructure law put in $48 million, set up funding to all the states, of which Ohio got $96 million and a year for a few years. And ODOT is splitting that money with the locals. They're, out of $96 million, 48 million goes to locals and 40 million of that goes to the county engineers. So we're getting a lot of bridge work done. So a lot of those bridges that you see this past year, like on McClure Road and Hendrickson Road, those are projects that are funded out of this latest round of federal funding. So we're in Hendrickson Road, we've got it ready. We have been going ahead and getting bridges designed, not knowing exactly what might happen with federal funding. We just were trying to get things ready for maybe getting additional funding. We were lucky, we were fortunate that we did, because we've got a couple of bridges that were moving ahead. We were scored high among the county projects because we had plans ready. They were on the shelf and ready to build, so we're moving ahead with those.
On the McClure Bridge replacement, is it just too narrow? Is it old? What's the problem?
The beams are deteriorating.
Okay.
They're concrete box beams, and they have a life of about 50 years, which I believe that bridge is close. It's it's over 40 years. I think it was built in 1980. So the concrete on it wears out, the beams rust out, and so we have to load rate it. In this particular bridge, it's load rated for basically 20 tons, I believe, right now. It's based on the type of trucks, going on it.
Okay. Are you gonna widen that bridge when you do
No,
this?
we're just gonna put
It
back.
seems
what
kinda
we got.
narrow to me.
It's 24-foot wide,
Okay,
but it's on, the reason it seems narrow is that
Because of
in
the
a-
twist on it when you go
Right.
into it?
it's on a little
Yeah,
curve.
okay. Every time I go over it, I just think this is narrow.
Yeah. So, no, we're gonna put back what we have. I think if we raised it or widened it, we would be encouraging more traffic on it, which we really don't want,
Okay.
so.
All right, and the Fields Earl widening, that's the biggest, most expensive project on here. Well, I'm sorry, maybe not. The other Willow Pond Boulevard widening too is pretty expensive, maybe a little bit more. So what is are you putting in more lanes?
Yep, 5 lanes
Okay.
from Snyder to Wilkins. And actually, it'll actually go into Escort Drive, but it'll be 5 lanes.
Okay, well, thank you.
And we're doing a little bit of a realignment too to improve the sight distance, the vertical sight distance through there.
So out of the 86 million, and we're putting up, or the feds are putting up 50 million,
Right.
that difference is all coming from
From
just
locals.
us, or?
Some of it is from Ohio Public Works, like on Fields Earl. And there might be another project on there where we've got OPWC funds. And, but a lot of it is the infrastructure bank funds that you've put in. That's going towards Fields Earl, State Route 63 and State Route 48. And I haven't listed some other projects that we're looking at doing that we don't have the local funds. Well, we're not using federal funds on it yet, like State Route 741 at Green Tree. Right now, we have not applied for federal funds for that, but we're planning on using our infrastructure bank funds for that. And
Yeah, I'm just glad that we're doing this is the time to do a lot of the work when we know the growth is coming.
Yeah.
We know what's going down with Union Village, and while it's still farmland in a lot of that area, this is the time we gotta do it.
right. Yeah. Well, thank you for your helping move these projects ahead.
All right, well, thank you, Neil, for coming over. All right, well, I guess the next on the agenda is work session with you, Chris. You ready to speak to us?
Good morning, Commissioners. Appreciate you making time for us. I just have 2 small agenda items, and both of them relate to source water. As you're aware, we pull our water, drinking water, from wells along the Great Miami River and the Little Miami River. And the aquifer along the Great Miami River is an awesome aquifer, and we want to protect it. So one of the things that we've done in conjunction with Ohio EPA is we put together a source water protection plan, and it's our management plan for the aquifer along the Great Miami River. We have 7 wells, production wells, at the confluence of Twin Creek and the Great Miami River. That water from that aquifer feeds all our customers up north. So we always want to make sure that there's nothing harmful that could potentially pollute the aquifer and cause problems for our source water. So the plan we've been working on for several years. I have to give credit to Catherine Gilbert in our office, our senior engineer in our office. She's done a great job. She's put together a water model, a groundwater model, and to identify maps that are, time of travel maps. So it shows a map that has the locations of, how much, the extent on where our wells draw from for 5 years and 10 years. So those time and travel maps are very helpful. We've gone through and located all the potential pollution sources within those time and travel maps. And we've flagged those and are monitoring those potential pollution sources to make sure that they're not threats to our source water. And then we've got some recommendations in that report as far as public education and public involvement. And so we're out. We've got an educator that goes out into the classrooms and talks to kids about, the importance of drinking water and source water and protecting our aquifers. And so that's part of the program also. So like I say, this is a program that we've been working on for the last 5 years. We've put a significant amount of effort into it. It calls out, what we want to do to protect our aquifers. And what we're asking today is we're asking for the board to adopt a resolution that would put this plan in place. So I think as part of the packet, it was included in your packet today. So the plan that we have in the packet is available. We'll post it on our website. It's some very good information for the general public to see what we have in place. We have actually, that's the plan for the public use. I think we actually have a more detailed plan for our in-house use that has additional steps that we're going to take place also. So that's what the main part of our meeting today is, just to try to inform you of the work we've got ongoing and with that source water protection plan, and ask that you adopt a resolution to enact that plan.
So the businesses that are already in this area, there's just extra monitoring? We're not trying to move any of the businesses out, right?
No. We try to go out there and touch base, try to talk to them about the importance of adopting best management practices. If there's any kind of chemicals out there, we try to make sure that there's containment at these businesses, that they're taking a look at their stormwater runoff, looking at their floor drains in their businesses, make sure that those don't go to the aquifer. So it's some public education efforts. We constantly look for, any type of pollution dumping, that could be out on, there's somebody going out and dumping, old refrigerators and stuff like that, or tires that could potentially be a source of pollution. So we work with the solid waste district, Warren County Solid Waste District, to try to make sure that gets cleaned up. So.
If I could maybe offer a suggestion, maybe working with Candace or Schnipke about going out with those companies, because they conduct business retention visits significantly. So either they can maybe open the door for you, or you can open the door for them and have those conversations with the companies.
Oh, yeah.
Might be helpful in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we need to pass, you want us to pass this resolution for?
Yeah, in your packet, you have a resolution. It's a resolution to endorse and support the source water assessment and protection plan for Franklin area public water system, and approve its submittal to Ohio EPA for endorsement.
Okay, and what about the resolution to authorize you to apply to?
That's actually Chris Weinich will talk about.
Okay, she's gonna talk about that, okay. Should we wait till you finish your presentation on both of them before we do anything? Or do we want to do the first one on the water assessment and protection plan for Franklin area? Do you want to pass that first?
Sure, that would be.
All right.
And yes?
Yes, okay.
And at this point, I'll turn it over to Chris Weinich.
All right.
So kind of to continue to talk about source water protection, the second resolution is what I'll kind of talk about. couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, Chris was in here. He talked a little bit about emerging contaminants that are coming up, which are these forever chemicals. PFAS is how we call them. He had a presentation. I think it was the paper presentation, the stack of paper, one that I know Commissioner Young really enjoyed. So that's what we're going to kind of follow up with. That's continued to become more and more prevalent in the source water conversation with all the drinking water purveyors around the state. As part of the federal infrastructure bill, there was obviously bits and pieces of it earmarked for certain areas. There were of that infrastructure bill, $60 billion was to be administered through the U.S. EPA for different segments. $44 billion of that was going to go towards state revolving loan funds, which every state has their own concept on how they administer that. So out of that, Ohio EPA has $1.4 billion to administer over 5 years. And pulling out of that even farther, they've basically said we have $90 million to use over 5 years for what are being referred to as emerging contaminants, which is what the PFAS falls under. What they're saying is that $90 million will be used over 5 years as 100% grant money. That's a good thing, obviously. $90 million is good, and this will have further conversations on this number, but that's not enough. There's going to be us alone here at the county. We're probably going to be somewhere in the $8 to $9 million range to treat these chemicals. So as you can tell, if we're one purveyor throughout the whole state, that's not going to last very long. So with that said, this resolution that's in front of you today is to authorize us to go into the nomination portion for this money. There's a revolving fund nomination that they do every year. This is a special round that they're doing mid-year due to this money just being released. So we feel it's in our best interest and the county's best interest to get in on this early, to get our name in the queue so that we can potentially have a piece of this $90 million that's being given out as grant money. So essentially that's all this says is it allows us as the department to put in our nomination form to get into this grant queue line essentially. There's a lot of details still to be figured out on how the money's going to be divvied up and how they're going to do it. We have concerns of how that's all going to go down. So we just want to get ourselves out there as soon as possible.
Okay, so this is a resolution that would authorize you to apply to the state of Ohio for loans for capital improvements for this granular activated carbon upgrade project. Is that what it's for?
Correct. So what we're doing is we're going to first implement it. We've already talked to AECOM, who's currently doing our softening improvements. They're looking to do an amendment to their contract to get us a study performed to figure out on a grand scale, does this granular activated carbon make sense? Where would it go? How would it work? This is all down in our south. So this is all down at the Richard A. Reneker plant. We don't have any hits of PFAS up in the north. This is all down in the south. So we're going to have a study done. It would go into a design phase, and then obviously we'd have a construction phase. All we're asking for, we're not committing to anything as far as more than potentially an amendment that you'll see here in the future of about $15,000 to that $4.2 million contract with AECOM. So that's the first step. That will definitely happen, and that we will definitely be pulling out of this potential funding source. But as we continue down the road, we're looking to get the construction and the design funded also. We would definitely bring all that back to the board prior to signing any contracts just to go over it, where we would be at. But this is just to get us in. This came up, they basically gave us a 30-day notice on this, so we just want to get in front of you to make you aware of it.
Okay. Anybody has any questions? All right, so we want to read the resolution?
Have a resolution to authorize the Warren County Sanitary Engineer or Deputy Sanitary Engineer to prepare and submit a nomination form to participate in the Water Supply Revolving Loan Account Program for 2023 and to execute contracts as required for the Richard A. Reneker Granular Activated Carbon Upgrades.
So moved.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to take a moment and just commend both of the Chris's. Obviously, this is a subject that has come up kind of rapidly here. Specifically, well, both, actually, Chris Rouse brought it up to the congressman when he was here this past Friday, but Weinich is going to participate in the fly-in this year, and he's done a lot of work thus far, working to share with our consultants that are setting meetings up in DC to not only try to meet directly with the US EPA to better understand what their items are coming down, but some of the legislators that sit on some of these committees that are driving some of this as well. So I just wanted to commend both of you for doing that, and specifically you, Chris, for your willing to participate in that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Before y'all leave, so is everything completed with all the water softening, or when is that gonna get completed?
So as you know, we have two systems. The north system, the Franklin area system has been online now for several months, probably about 4 months. It's been fully online. The Richard A. Reneker system, which serves Deerfield, Hamilton Township, those are the largest portions of the service area. That will be going online beginning September 1st. We will start bringing it online. It will take upwards of 6 to 8 weeks to bring it fully online. We anticipate around October 31st for that system to be fully online, receiving the 8 grains of softened water that we have promised everyone. So to answer your question, October 31st is the date we have today that we believe we're going to have 100% softened water for our customers.
With the area that you do have the operation of the water softening, are we hearing from any of our customers about that?
We are. We've heard some very good commentary back about it. They're happy with the water they're receiving. There are some, and to be completely honest, there are some people that expected an even softer water, because I think it took some public education, and we've done this a little bit with some of the flyers we've put out. A lot of the private companies that have water softening, come in, the Culligans of the world. There's a lot of times they softened very far, so down to potentially 0 or 1. So some of these customers, some of the feedback we've gotten is this isn't soft water. Well, it is. It is right in line with what Greater Cincinnati provides. It is a softened water. No, it's not 0. We don't recommend a zero hardness or 0 softness to any customers, because it's not good for the copper pipes within your home. So we've gotten a mixture. I would say definitely more positive, but there has been some question about the true softness of the water.
Yeah, because the people that soften their water very, very low, if they think that, oh my gosh, this is not the same quality of softened water.
That's been the comment, and the positive to that, and how we kind of talk them through this, is you certainly can keep your softener online. If it's a ion exchange where it uses salt, it's going to use way less salt than it did before, because it's not bringing it down as far. So you're not going from here to here, you're just going from here to here. So you're going to use less. So that is still a cost savings. Even if someone wants to soften it down farther, it is still a cost savings. So it is personal, and that's how we've tried to educate the customers. It is a personal preference thing. Some people do want even softer water. We believe, and we find this true with the water we're providing, that really it is providing the water that you're expecting to see when you put a load of dishes in your dishwasher. You are not going to get that residue that you're typically going to see with the hard water. So that's kind of how we compare it. The aesthetics is definitely way better than what it was.
Can we adjust the level of the hardness of the water with our equipment?
Yes, you can. It's not recommended. It can certainly be looked at. Obviously there's a cost associated with going to certain softnesses. There's a source water component, meaning if you want to go softer, you're going to be using more water, because you're rejecting more water. You're sending more out as what's called discharge. So there's a lot of factors to that. I think where we dialed in was we looked at our neighboring communities that currently soften water, and we decided to fall in line with that same softness. So that's kind of how we landed on our number.
Okay, so give me an example. What is the number we landed on?
It is 8 grains per gallon, which is the equivalent of what City of Cincinnati, Greater Cincinnati Waterworks provides to our Socialville area. So Socialville, we have that area carved out that is served by Greater Cincinnati Water still up until 2025. That area receives 8 grains per gallon of hardness. So that is the equivalent of what Greater Cincinnati is providing their customers. City of Hamilton, City of Dayton are also right at 7 to 8 grains.
So when you go and you put a water softening system into your home, for example, do they tell you what their level of hardness will be after you use their system? And do they try to get down to 0 or something like that?
I'm not 100% sure how those private companies do it. What they typically, the number they want is what's being provided to the softener. So we'll get the calls from the homeowners, what are you providing me? So before this, we were upwards of, what were we, 18, 19 grains? 20 grains. So when they would call in, we'd tell them, hey, tell your Culligan guy or whoever you're using to tell them you're getting 20 grains, and then they dial it in from there. We never make recommendations on what to go down to, so I'm not sure what.
Well, we decided to go from 20 to 8.
Yes.
And the choice of going to 20 to 8 was based upon our survey of what other surrounding water providers were doing, is that right? And in particular, you were looking at what Cincinnati Water was providing to Warren County.
Yes.
And that's at 8. It's curious to me because doesn't Cincinnati take the water from the Ohio River? And that wouldn't have any hardness on it at all, would
We
it?
have 2 treatment plants. One is their Richard Miller treatment plant along the Ohio River, which is the largest treatment plant. The other is Bolton treatment plant, which pulls from the Great Miami River, which is groundwater. So it's the same hardness, very similar source water to what we have. And they go through a softening process there. It's a lime softening process. It's different than ours.
So we don't get the water from the Ohio River, we get it from,
Our source water is from aquifers along Great.
oh, I know that's our source, but you're saying that the Cincinnati water is also from,
They have 2 treatment plants. One pulls from the Ohio River, the other one pulls from wells along the Great Miami River.
okay, so that's gonna be hardened water, or hard water.
Yes, they soften that water down to about probably similar, it's probably to 8 grains of hardness.
Okay, so if we were to look at it, regardless of that particular fact, if that was not the case, and would we be seeking to soften the water even further? Because it sounds like all we did was try to match what somebody else was doing.
I don't think it's a cost-benefit ratio. I don't think the cost to soften lower doesn't really, you don't get much benefit to soften lower than what we're doing now. What we're doing now, it protects, appliances, we're not, because our hard water would cause some damage to dishwashers, it would cause damage to hot water heaters, because you would end up with a lot of deposit of calcium carbonate in your dishwasher and your hot water heaters. This reduces that. And it also, it's the aesthetic part of when you put a glass in a dishwasher, you end up with glass, dishes that come out with spots on them. You don't have that anymore. So that's where, the softening, taking it to the level where we're at now, protects appliances, provides a lot of aesthetics, that benefits that. Softening even further than that is more expensive, and you don't get a whole lot, in our opinion, you don't get that much benefit from softening lower. So that's why we chose 8 grains of hardness, because, you don't get a whole lot of benefit softening less than that. And also, it's the standard that's around us. You have Cincinnati Waterworks that's doing that. You have Dayton, you have Hamilton.
Miamisburg just recently came online. Correct.
I don't know of any other municipality out there that softens less than 8 grains.
Okay. And so is there, and is, the other people that have chosen 8 grains, and you're saying there's not a lot of benefit, when you talk about benefit, you're saying that you're taking the water hardness from a factor like 20 down to 8, and that number is the optimal number to prevent damage to the,
I think it's a good number to protect appliances and to, yes.
okay. And the reason why we've gotten some negative calls is because people thought, gee, you would be softening to something similar to what they were softening to with their water softener systems.
Honestly, the calls we get about your customers is, it doesn't feel the same. This water doesn't feel the same. And when they say that, it's like, when you're taking a shower, it doesn't lather the same. You don't have like.
Well, I'm
it's
familiar
like,
with what
you
you're
know,
talking about, but for me, my experience with really soft water is that I couldn't get the soap off me as
hated it.
easily.
It's a
It was more
preference
difficult.
thing. Yeah, so
You know?
that's the
There is a
comment
feel
you
to
got.
it.
Yeah, it's the feel to it. That's the comment we get is, well, it doesn't feel the same, because I'm used to softening down to 0.
But people still have the option of doing that, and this will save them money because their softening isn't going from 20 to 0, it's going from 8 to 0, so that is by fact that they're gonna use less salt.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially with the bags of salt upwards of $7 a bag now. I mean, what we're charging our customers, they're still gonna be saving money than where they were at before.
Okay, well, that's a good explanation. I appreciate knowing that, so that when people do ask us about it, obviously this was a big deal to us to soften water like this. It was something that, we advertised quite a bit. A lot of people were looking forward to it. And so it's nice to be able to explain to people who are experiencing this and they are not getting what they thought they would get. Okay.
Well, vast majority of our customers are very happy with it.
Yeah, for the record, I've not gotten any shower calls.
No shower. Vast majority of customers are very happy with it. We have a couple calls that come in that are like, yeah, it doesn't feel the same. It's not.
And it is, well, because it's not taking it down so low that they, apparently, however they were softening the water before, might have been going down to 0.
Could be, yeah. But by all means, at any time, if the board ever has questions similar to that, and you just need some, reach out to us, or we'll certainly come in for another, just talk about what we have going on. So by all means, just let us know, and we'll come in and talk.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate the update.
As Martin said, thank you both, we appreciate both of you guys.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Okay, is there anything else?
I have one thing.
Yes.
Your September 13th Tuesday meeting is canceled because of the DC fly-in and a lack of a quorum. So my question is, the Thursday before that, September 8th, is everybody okay to hold that September 8th meeting?
Sure.
Yes.
Works
Okay.
for me.
Sure.
That's all I have.
All right.
Yeah, Tiff and I have one thing for you to consider for next week, and we'll bring it back up for a discussion, as we're rolling into our kind of end-of-year budget cycle. Obviously, it seems like very recently I was in front of you relative to the tax budget, but we need to send out the memo to your departments and then also to other elected officials relative to the end-of-year budget. Obviously, we seek guidance relative to where the folks should target themselves as far as a percentage. And so just want to have you thinking about that for next week. Tiff and I have started looking at the numbers. If you recall, the tax budget was about 8.5% above last year's appropriation, or your appropriated budget. That had the full weight of children's services. If you back that out, you would be approximately about 6.5%. Right now, we're going to do a little bit more digging, but Tiff and I were talking yesterday. We might recommend that the target be 4%. We think we can get that down to that with some maneuvering. Your directors are working relative to the conversation we had on items with healthcare, making sure we can bring you an objective perspective on what are some really good things about our healthcare, things we might want to improve upon. There's another subgroup that's doing items relative to salaries. I know Tina's setting on that one, salaries and how we compare. So this will probably be a little bit of a more aggressive cycle, but just asking for some guidance to be thinking about when we come in for next week.
Okay.
So,
I just have one thing. Tom, if I might.
Sure.
So today, the United Way of Warren County kicks off its campaign. We're gonna be over at Armco Park at noon for a lunch, so if anyone is available, Tina and I are going to represent the commissioners, and you're all welcome to come if you're free for lunch. They're having a food truck and, I don't know, whatever kind of activity around there. So we appreciate all of the employees that participate in the annual campaign.
Okay, great. And obviously, we just got finished with our tennis tournament down in Mason, which was enjoyable. It was very nice to be invited to go attend that on last, I guess it was Thursday night. And I assume that that was a great success as usual.
Yeah, I mean, we've always had success with the things that the port and the county have put on. I think what we noticed just anecdotally, and I think I've heard on a couple different interviews, that the attendance this year was significantly higher. I think some of that played obviously with folks being willing to get out more. I think with the announcement of Serena retiring and her playing, that brought out some different individuals. But no, every time that we were there, the attendance seemed to be extremely high. You could just tell by the time it took us to get through parking and things of that nature. So, yeah, it was quite successful.
Good. All right. Anyone else? Have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?